are many words and phrases that film fans dread. Cinematic universe, gritty reboot, directed by Zack Snyder. But one that consistently causes cinephiles' blood to run cold is reshoot. A reshoot is any scene that was shot after a movie's initial filming period wrapped up. Sometimes directors aren't happy with their original efforts and want to change things. Sometimes real-life events require an artistic pivot. And sometimes, worst of all, the studio interferes. However, that word doesn't always signal doom and gloom, as in a few rare cases, reshoots have actually been a good thing. Hard to believe, I know, but it is true. So with that in mind, I'm Ellie for What Culture, here with 10 reshoots that actually improved horror movies. Number 10, Misery. If you've ever worried that you might be a little too obsessed with a celebrity, then just remember that you've never kidnapped your idol and smashed their legs in with a sledgehammer. Unless you have, in which case you may want to get some help. Director Rob Reiner brought Misery, Stephen King's classic story of fandom gone too far, to the big screen in 1990. James Caan played author Paul Sheldon, whilst Kathy Bates dazzled as his saviour/captor Annie Wilkes. In the end, Paul escapes Annie's clutches by killing her, but Reiner wasn't happy with how his character looked after his epic struggle. Originally, Paul was shown walking normally after he gains his freedom, which Reiner thought undermined what he'd been through. Reiner went back and reshot the ending so that Paul was now walking with the use of a cane. It's a subtle detail, one that you wouldn't pick up on if you didn't know it had been changed, but it goes a long way in visualising just how horrible a time Paul had had. It's kind of hard to believe that Rob Reiner had been directing When Harry Met Sally just 1 year prior. Number 9, Army of the Dead. On paper, a combination zombie heist movie about a group of soldiers robbing a Las Vegas casino in the middle of an undead outbreak sounds like a rip-roaring good time. Unfortunately, this turned out to be a classic case of great idea, bad execution. Army of the Dead from 2021, directed by Zack Snyder, did not go down well amongst film fans, and as it turns out, it could have been even worse. Actor Chris D'Elia had originally been cast in the film, but was pulled after sexual abuse allegations were made against him. Needing to find a replacement, Snyder embarked on several reshoots with Tig Notaro now filling the role as a character called Marianne Peters. Notaro had to complete her scenes alone against a green screen due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, but she didn't let this get in the way of delivering a great performance. Marianne was heralded as one of the high points of the whole movie, with Notaro gaining significant press attention in the wake of its release. See, it wasn't all bad. It was mostly bad, but not all. Number 8, Megan. What do you get if you cross Chucky with every creepy pageant kid you've ever seen on a reality show? You get Megan, one of the breakout horror hits of 2023. After an 8-year-old girl's parents both die, her scientist aunt gifts her a lifelike robotic doll to serve as her friend and guardian. It goes well at first, but unfortunately she forgot to turn off the doll's kill everyone setting. Why it even had one of those in the first place is baffling, but I digress. Megan was praised for its originality and tone, as well as the physical performances of young actor Amy Donald, who brought the psychopathic plaything to life. All of this is even more impressive once you clock that the movie is only rated PG-13. Director Gerard Johnston organised a number of reshoots to garner this rating, and according to him, this made the film even scarier. He said, "I even remember thinking early on, this could be PG-13, and some of my favourite films like Drag Me to Hell are PG-13. It's fun having to rely on sound and suggestion so much." Fun isn't the word most people would go with, but you do you, pal. You do you. Number 7, Deep Blue Sea. Despite the fact that they are never going to be as good as Jaws, several scary movies have turned to the ocean as a source of fear, including 1998's Deep Blue Sea. A bunch of research scientists are left stranded when their underwater facility is damaged, leaving them to fight not only the neighbouring wildlife but the rising seawater itself. Whilst not everyone's cup of salty tea, Deep Blue Sea is a cult favourite, with Samuel L. Jackson's death scene being a particular highlight. In the original ending to the movie, Dr. Susan McAllister is among those rescued. Test audiences didn't like this as they felt unsympathetic towards McAllister, so the decision was taken to change the outcome and kill her off at the last minute. This turned out to be a great choice, as it not only gave the film one final twist, but it also allowed Saffron Burrows to do her best acting of the entire movie. For perhaps the first time in history, a focus group actually saved a movie. Well, that's an exaggeration, but it's only a slight one. Number 6, A Nightmare on Elm Street. A Nightmare on Elm Street, the movie that made sleep the enemy, thereby ruining the circadian rhythms of an entire generation of film fans. The canon ending to Wes Craven's masterpiece sees Nancy seemingly defeat Freddy Krueger in the real world, waking up to find her friends and her mother Marge all still alive. She gets in her friend's car, ready to go to school, only for it to be revealed that Freddy is still alive. The gloved villain bursts through the front door of Nancy's house, grabbing her mother by the throat, seemingly killing her. A great ending, one that shows just how powerful this demonic force truly is. However, things could have gone differently were it not for some studio interference. Craven initially wanted the movie to end on a more positive note, with Nancy and her friends genuinely having survived their ordeal. Producer Robert Shea had other ideas. He wanted a twist ending, one that wasn't so smiles and rainbows. Craven relented and the scene with Marge was added in. Sorry, Mrs. Thompson, but fate just didn't want you to live. Number 5, I Know What You Did Last Summer. As well as being an archetypal teen slasher, 1997's I Know What You Did Last Summer did the world a favour by bringing together the ultimate power couple, Freddie Prinze Jr. and Sarah Michelle Gellar. Without it, we may never have gotten the live-action Scooby-Doo movie. That's not a world anybody wants to live in. Prinze and Gellar play two members of a group of kids who run over a mysterious figure one summer, only for their actions to catch up with them in increasingly gruesome ways. The first character to taste the cold steel of vengeance is Max, played by future Big Bang Theory star Johnny Galecki. Max gets impaled on the villain's hook early on in the film, but it wasn't the film's murderous fisherman that killed him, it was test audiences. People at these screenings complained that there weren't any deaths in the early portion of the film. Seeing as Max had the flimsiest connections to the rest of the gang, he was chosen as the sacrificial lamb. Those audiences were right, the film needed an early death to give it a jolt of energy. Maybe test screenings aren't as bad as everyone thought. Number 4, Final Destination. Though it's revealed in the second film that he dies via a falling brick to the noggin, premonition haver Alex Browning survives the original Final Destination along with fellow high schooler Clear Rivers. The movie's iconic ending begins with redeemed jock Carter also alive, only to be crushed by a falling sign, an indicator that death is not finished collecting souls. This helps compound the inevitable nature of Alex and Clear's eventual demise and makes an already bleak film even more despairing. Alex actually died in 2 different endings to the movie. He was slashed to bits by a helicopter in one, electrocuted while saving Clear in the other. But it was decided that audiences would be too invested in Alex to actually watch him die, so a third ending was made where he survived and Carter died in his place. This was definitely the right call, as nobody wanted to see Alex fall so close to the end. Also, there was a bit in one of the alternative endings about how Clear was pregnant with Alex's baby and she could now predict deaths, which would have been way too complicated. Number 3, Deadly Friend. 2 years after the triumph of A Nightmare on Elm Street, Wes Craven put out a new movie called Deadly Friend, which at first was more of a sci-fi thriller than a true horror. Paul is a gifted teenager and computer whiz. After a neighborhood girl is pronounced brain dead, he decides to experiment on her by placing a powerful robotic processor into her head. This goes about as well as you'd expect it to. The girl, Samantha, does come back to life, but she is now imbued with a murderous rage that Paul must bring to an end. Craven wanted to show his range with this movie, to prove that he could direct something family-orientated. Unfortunately, his fanbase were not happy that he'd sold out and demanded the picture be made more gory. Powerless to stop them, Wes caved. Almost all of Deadly Friend was reshot, with an emphasis on tension and scares instead of teen-friendly antics. As a result, the film is much scarier, although some people see this as a bad thing and lament what could have been a fun, low-stakes romp. Well, at least there's more blood in this version. Number 2, World War Z. If you were trapped in a world where fast-moving zombies were taking over the planet, you'd want Brad Pitt on your side too. The super hunk plays Jerry Lane in World War Z, a former UN investigator who leads the hunt for a cure to the ongoing outbreak. The film, which was based on a 2006 novel, scored pretty well with critics and fans, but this might not have been the case without help from a TV legend. Dissatisfied with the first draft of the film, Pitt brought in Lost co-creator Damon Lindelof to drastically reshape the movie's third act. This led to a mammoth reshoot campaign, 7 weeks of work resulting in 30 to 40 minutes of new material, which made up a majority of the film's new ending. Pitt's character was now a proper action star, fending off zombies with improvised body armor and taking no nonsense from his reanimated foes. This added some serious appeal to World War Z, which had previously ended on a more drab and dreary note. Thank God Lindelof didn't try and introduce some side plot where all the zombies got stuck on an island. God, could you imagine? Number 1, Jaws. Anyone who has ever read anything about Jaws will know that Steven Spielberg's tourist-munching blockbuster was a total nightmare to make. It turns out that filming scenes on water with a bunch of temperamental mechanical shark props is the antithesis of an easy life, as Stevie Boy found out to his dismay. The biggest problem was that the fake shark looked like, well, a fake shark, completely undermining any threat Bruce posed. And then, genius struck. Spielberg found that merely implying the shark's presence instead of showing it outright built tension and made the great white even more menacing than any actual shot could have. As such, he majorly retooled the film, resulting in the sparse, edge-of-your-seat thrill ride audiences know today. So much of Jaws' appeal comes from the fact that the monster is hidden right until the end. It's often held up as the example of show don't tell, still terrifying new viewers nearly 50 years after it first hit the big screen. And to think that without Spielberg's flair for the dramatic, Jaws could have just been another schlocky monster movie with a laughably bad creature at its core.